Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome back to Today on Inside Marketing with MarketSurge. And we're diving into a topic that most companies think they're good at, but few truly understand. That's cross-cultural integration. We'll talk about why it fails, how it breaks teams, and what leaders can do to finally fix it. We're joined by someone who has been living and breathing this work for over 2 decades, Sandra Bonifacio, cross-cultural leadership coach, emotional intelligence expert, and founder of Expats. Sandra has helped leaders, teams, and global organizations navigate the emotional, cultural, and interpersonal challenges that come with working across borders, not just geographically, but emotionally. She specializes in cultural sensitivity and emotional intelligence, leading multicultural teams, helping professionals adapt abroad, communicating frameworks that reduce tensions, and restoring confidence during moments of transition. Sandra, so happy to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Reed, for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been nice to get to know you over these last few weeks.
Likewise.
And I'm super interested in this topic. I think it's something that we, in the world of today, we are seeing more and more of people either translocating or seeing their communities and workspaces being more and more diverse with a lot more representation from different communities. And so I think this is going to be more and more important as the time goes on. So tell me a little bit about some mistakes you see. So say a company does not take cross-cultural integration into account. What's a mistake that you see by companies that's very common?
Yeah, what I think it's very important to understand that when you are sending employees abroad on a daily basis, the operational processes and the managerial styles will be different. So I think without the proper cultural training, expats might feel a little bit unmotivated, left behind, not integrated. So I think it's very, very important that companies provide cultural training, and not just to get acquainted with the new culture, but also training in communication, how the new expat will be communicating in this new work environment.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the term culture fit. Now, I know that a lot of companies are looking for that or they're trying to recruit for that. How would you say that just looking for people that fit a culture might hurt team performance?
I think when you are working with diverse teams, everybody brings something that is unique. And I think that can enrich a team performance. So to expect people to just fit into a particular culture and do things a certain way might leave a lot of creativity aside, especially now with younger people that are very creative and innovative. And sometimes they feel, well, I don't want to perform in these rigid work environments. And sometimes they quit their jobs and go elsewhere. So I think it's very important to take into account the richness that each person can bring to the team.
Well, absolutely. I think that's really important. And, like recognizing that it's not always something tangible, but a lot of benefits that really enrich everybody, help everybody learn. I think there's a lot of pluses here. So you've been working in this field a while. What surprised you when you first began coaching expats, whether it's from the emotional standpoint or cultural standpoint, and maybe some learnings we could have that companies could start implementing?
Yeah, I think one of the main things to take into account is that expats are out of their normal circle of influence. And so it's not just that they feel, they fit right in as soon as I get there. And so I would say maybe more time spent from leaders welcoming these new expats into the company culture and to ensure that the employees are engaging well.
Okay, great. Can you think of any particular experiences? I've had the experience where I both worked as the expat and I've had expats join the office. And I think it's almost an experience everybody should have to be the expat. And I think it gave me a lot more empathy for people that maybe weren't local. Do you have any thoughts that way? I mean, Sandra, you've had experience working in different places. What do you think how can leaders develop more empathy for that?
I think they have to understand that people, like I said before, are outside their circle of influence. They are coming into a new culture, and sometimes They come with families. So for
Mm,
expat, sometimes it's easier if they are sent to work for the same company abroad. I mean, it's like more or less you are familiar with the corporate culture, but then you get home and you have your family members, your spouse, who sometimes is your company spouse that left her job or his job behind to be part of this experience. So I think sometimes more compassion, I would say, on the part of the leaders, more check-ins, regular
mm,
check-ins. How are you doing? How are you adjusting? Is there anything we can do for you? And not to think that onboarding is just a one-time thing, because it takes more than 2 or 3 days. It takes sometimes months. And
yeah.
usually, when people move abroad, they said the first 6 months are the most difficult ones. And
Mm,
so I think to do regular check-ins and to make sure that the is engaging well, very important. If you are going on your own and as a solopreneur or entrepreneur, I would try to definitely find a group of local people that I can relate to. The social aspect is extremely
mm.
important. I mean, being connected to locals, even if you're not very fluent in the language of the target culture, but just being with people, socialize, get out there, get to know the area you're in, that will help a lot transition into the
Yeah.
new culture.
So to get like a finer point on it, where do you see most emotional misunderstandings showing up in multicultural teams? Like, are there certain expectations of like communication style, like giving feedback or
Definitely.
critiques? Yeah.
For example, I was raised in Argentina, and
Mm,
Latins are known for being very passionate and sometimes loud, and sometimes that can be taken as an aggressive way of communicating. It can make other people, like for example, Asian cultures, feel like they are not left aside, but they don't interact as much when we come in with this aggressive style. Also, the way feedback is given sometimes in cultures, people are very careful when giving feedback. It's a very sensitive time for people. And in others, they are just very direct.
mhm,
And so that's another important point to take into account. Also, relationship building, the importance of, for example, in Asian cultures, you have to get to know the person before you do business with them.
mm,
Where in the American culture is totally different, and so it is in some Latin American countries. But relationship building is another very good point. Also, work life balance and personal boundaries. When we moved to Europe, we were living in the States with my family, and we had an experience in Germany. What I was amazed at is like people were working just to get that whole month of August off. They expect you to maybe take that time off. And so it's very different for someone working for an American culture where, you take 2 weeks max, sometimes three. And so the expectations of that work-life balance also is something to take into account. What else? Different ways of resolving conflicts. For
mm.
example, if you want your employees to participate actively in conflict resolution versus you dictating what needs to be done, that's another point.
No, no. Well, I just along that thread, are there any particular so say I come into or I'm working in an environment and then somebody from an expat from another grew up in another culture, another country, are there like general emotional cues I should look out for? You've outlined some,
Yeah.
but are there certain expectations I may have as an American that I need to tread more carefully? Like, you've highlighted a few, but like, is there like good rules of thumb, like
Yeah.
maybe tone something down or be more clear in
The
other
one
areas?
that is, it's the typical one is humor, so certain
Ah,
cultures can use humor and they can be like, they make jokes and they are very sarcastic. Well, that might
mhm.
not, go well with someone that is not used to that kind of interaction. So that's one that really stands out a lot and can make people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay. No, that tracks. When I spent some time working in Italy, I would default to sarcasm occasionally, and they would just be mystified,
Yeah.
like, what, why would you say such a thing? But yeah, that's a great one. Conversely, I worked for a company, Oracle, and there was quite a strong pipeline of Indian technical people, support people that would come to the office that I was working in. There was a large enough group of them that they felt quite comfortable, but there were clearly some differences. And I almost felt like I had to adapt, and I was almost the outsider in some situations.
Mhm.
That was very interesting as well.
And how did you
Um,
feel working with Indian culture? What was your
well,
experience?
Well, I noticed that they were very precise, very polite and formal, and extremely hardworking and, like on time,
Mhm.
very diligent. And I think real priority was on like knowing the right answer and coming in with a lot of knowledge.
Mhm.
Negotiate, for instance, just very, like distinct lines and obviously like very intelligent people I worked with and with some great skills, but it was not quite like the friendly, loose environment that you often see. Like, well, I think it might be like this, or they came prepared
Yeah,
and
yeah, definitely.
in that way. Well, so tell me a little bit about. Yeah, actually, I'd be curious. Do you have any general observations? Are there certain industries that do this very well? Like maybe they have more years of having multicultural offices versus others, or certain types of businesses
Well, I would
or
say
work
the ones that
situations?
invest the most are definitely like educational institutions because they deal with
Ah,
a lot of
okay.
students that, have programs abroad or they come to study. They move countries frequently. So they are the ones that, yeah. And then the pharmaceutical industries too. It was one that I was used to work for. Ag businesses, tech companies. There's a lot of outsourcing with tech companies.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I think there's probably some element of that, like what technical skills are required, and maybe like the expertise that we're training well in our schools in the US, and maybe we have some deficiencies in other areas. Do you find that, say, you have a multicultural office that has a lot of, everybody's on the same page technically, but maybe emotionally or like the social alignment is off, like the way they confront challenges or a new project, like how can a company prepare for that or
I, th-
build around that?
I think when you have that situation on the technical side, you will have
Mhm.
tasks completed, goals met. But when there's not that emotional cohesion among team members, some team members may feel that they lack motivation, they feel frustrated, their points of view are not taken into account. So they don't really feel part of the team. And in the long run, it doesn't work out very well.
Okay. Now, I'm sure I'm simplifying a lot of these factors, but an image popped into my mind. It seems like in these situations, there's the leader of the team, the main body of the team that's primarily of one similar culture, maybe the local culture, and then the expat that joins the team. Who in these scenarios needs the most training or needs to make the most accommodation generally to be successful
Yeah.
all throughout?
It's generally the expat coming into the group.
Okay.
Yeah, and I said we because we've been there and you too have do, our parts. And it's usually hard. But I also think that a good leader is the one that also provides training, not just cultural, but communication training. So he integrates the expat into how that particular team is communicated and he himself knows about the expat culture. So it's for me, it's
Hmm.
like a two-way street.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned several times that the social aspect of this adaptation is really important.
Mhm.
A lot of that happens, a little bit of that happens during work hours, but a lot of it happens outside of work hours.
Mhm.
To what degree can a leader help that along or facilitate that or should be involved?
Yeah, and
Guidelines?
I saw this in a company I was working for in Argentina when the director of the department started organizing after our meetings. Employees felt a lot more engaged and they were really looking forward to that hour of socializing with their colleagues and even with the leader who was higher up than they were. And I think it's to create that on a more frequent basis. I wouldn't say every week, but maybe once every 15 days or once a month to organize some outings just to share, how's your life going and anything outside the work routine, get to know the person on a more personal level. It's very important because then also when they are back at work, they feel heard, they feel noticed, they don't feel that they are just a number, but they are taken into account in a different way. So I think it's very important that, the leader is horizontal way of leading versus the vertical one. Well, people feel much better in the horizontal way of leading.
So what about when this goes very well and an expat joins the team, succeeds and moves into a leadership position? They're still an outsider to some degree. Do you have good guidelines for an expat or somebody non-native to that local communication style being successful as a leader? Are there certain things they can do to help themselves or that an organization can do to help them?
I think it's very important that you also get the training of how that corporate culture works in that country. That's very important to have a more fluent communication with the team members. Also, sometimes I would say when people move abroad, in the initial phase, it's very important to have a coach, to have a space that is safe where they can open up and express things that happen to them and not just be left there having to figure everything out on their own because it's a lot.
Okay.
In some experiences, leaders have been assigned what they call a buddy, but it's like sometimes it's an agency that helps them, during the initial transition period to find good places to learn the language or continue learning the language. Sometimes if they didn't have time to do it before going into the culture, the target culture, they give them time to make sure that once they move into the culture, that's one thing that they don't have to worry about, so that the family is settled, that the kids are okay. And so the leader can concentrate on his new task because, they also have to perform in a new environment. It's the same company, but I am dealing with locals. Will they understand me? And sometimes people are even judged by accents. And so I would say, for a leader coming into a new position abroad, for people to be more compassionate. And sometimes it's just about communication, whether you communicate, with a strong or a weak, or as long as people make themselves understood, that's, I think, a very important point to take into account. And yeah, I would say more compassion towards the.
Okay. That's good to hear. When we're talking in terms of a team or an individual leader, are there certain practices, like daily practices, that a leader or a team can do together to strengthen their capability to take on expats or just be more welcoming, more compatible with differences? Are there any things that you can practice in anticipation of somebody joining that team?
The first one that comes to mind is active listening. And it's not just hearing the words, it's looking at the nonverbal language, it's the tone, it's opening up to see what the other person conveys and doesn't convey, and for you to be prepared to read that. So I think leaders should have that preparation to be able to read beyond words. Tone conveys a lot, and nonverbal language as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I would predict that we will see more of this in our workspaces than less going forward, that there will probably be more opportunities for this. And it does sound like we need to individually, prepare ourselves to be more compassionate, better listeners, active listeners, and ready for this being a part of how we work. And multiculturalism, I think, it has tremendous benefits to our work, to our lives. And I'm glad that there are professionals like you really helping organizations thrive with this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. And Sandra, if people would like to work with you, where can they find you?
Okay, I have a website called expats.com, Xpattitudes, or my LinkedIn profile. I'm Sandra Bonifacio, so the information is outlined there.
Fantastic. Well, Sandra, it's been a pleasure, and I will include those links in the show notes for anybody interested. But please reach out to Sandra, whether you yourself are the expat or you have people joining your team. I think this is great training, great skill building for anybody. Thank you
very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.